Hey YouTube, what's up? JB Studios here. Wanted to talk a little bit about where I think the story should go next for Marvel's Spider-Man 3. And of course, if there's going to be like spin-off things in between. I already stated in my review I was not a big fan of the story. I think there's a lot of things that were unfortunately done that I disagree with, and I don't think they were in character. But I think there actually is a way that we can remedy some of this stuff. So, first thing I want to address is the Peter Parker being incredibly nerfed in this game. We need to come up with a reason on why Peter was really off of his game, because it started off with him being incredibly lackluster in the first Sandman mission. I mean, Miles Morales saves this dude so many times, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Just because Miles has 2 bonus powers, he's supposed to be better than Peter? That's absolute crap, and we all know that. He has bioelectricity, and he has invisibility. That does not even come close to mattering in terms of physical strength, which Peter is supposed to be stronger. His spider sense is supposed to be better. His reflexes are supposed to be better. He's supposed to be physically faster than Miles. Miles has these upgrades of bioelectricity and invisibility, essentially to put the fact that he is lesser of a character on par with Peter. He's not supposed to be physically as strong. He's not supposed to have as good of a spider sense. He's not supposed to be physically as fast, and he's supposed to be more of a, green individual. He's supposed to not have as much experience, and he's supposed to be clumsy compared to Peter, but they completely switch the roles, where Peter is basically nothing. So we need to come up with a narrative reason as to why Peter is sucking. And to me, the best thing is the death of Aunt May. I think he really needs to be in his head. They kind of even address it in the game, where Miles actually goes into Peter's head and sees exactly how difficult it is to be Peter. When he gets beaten down and pummeled by all of Peter's villains, and then sees that he's still really hung up on May. I think what they need to do is double down on that and really explore that. And explain that what was going on was, when Peter first became Spider-Man, he was selfish, right? And his uncle died because of him being selfish and not thinking about anyone but himself. Well, the opposite is true of Aunt May. He doesn't look the other way because he knows that something bad can happen. So maybe now he's kind of starting to second guess that concept or that code, because he did what was right for others and he still lost someone. So I think that's an interesting parallel here to explore, where Peter is now questioning whether or not with great power comes great responsibility is actually true. And that also would kind of explain why he decides to quit at the end, or at least take a breather to try to reassess and figure out exactly what he wants to do. So, what do we need for Peter to become Spider-Man again? Well, I think we need a lesson. He needs to be reminded of this code. This whole concept of him wanting to take a step back to fight climate change is not only out of character, but also kind of stupid in world. It's like, dude, you just stopped an alien invasion. There are bigger issues than climate change in this universe. This isn't our universe. This is a universe where people can snap their fingers and obliterate the entire population. That's why I always feel like introducing real world issues into superhero ones can sometimes be, sometimes they just don't gel well. Because like I said, you got characters like Thanos that can snap their fingers, and you're worried about the bees? No, that would take a back seat in a world like this. This world is not our world. They have literal aliens invading and eating people. So I think he needs to learn a lesson. And I think they've set it up perfectly to almost recreate the storyline from the Clone Saga, where Peter took a break, or at least for a while, and allowed Ben Reilly to become the main timeline Spider-Man. If you remember in that story, that was around the time that Goblin was showing up again, and we're about to introduce this universe to the Goblin, so it's kind of set up perfectly. It's almost one for one exactly the same. Peter took time off to be with MJ and let someone else become Spider-Man, and Goblin is about to show up. Well, what was the repercussions of Peter stopping? Well, he lost his unborn child, and Ben Reilly died. So I think the exact same thing needs to happen here. I think we need to see him lose an unborn child, and we need to see him lose Miles. So I know that's going to make people mad, but hey, if Miles fans can constantly say that Peter should die, then I'm going to do it too. Miles should die. Because Peter needs to relearn what it means to be Spider-Man. And it means never looking the other way and never giving up. And if you're not going to kill Miles off, then at least ridiculously wound him to a degree that Peter realizes he needs to just not look the other way. Because no matter how capable Miles is, that's not what matters. To Peter, it's not about, is the job getting done? Is the city safe? That's not what it is. Obviously, that's the end goal, but it's how the city becomes safe. And it has to be him. He can't look the other way. And even if Miles or Ben Reilly or anyone else is completely capable, Peter knows that even if he's letting them do it, he's looking the other way. And if something bad happens, he will feel that guilt. That's who he is. He holds that weight on his shoulders. So, like I said, let's say Miles is perfectly capable, but then something bad happens. Well, now Peter is going to feel that guilt and say, well, I looked the other way. Miles got killed or hurt because of me. So we need something like that to happen. Let's say we don't kill Miles, and Miles just gets mortally wounded, and Peter loses an unborn child, or at least almost does, in order for Peter to have this lesson, right? What I think needs to happen at that point, then, let's give Miles a new character arc. They keep saying that Miles is supposed to be himself, but he's not. He's just Spider-Man. He's taken on that role. Well, I think what needs to happen is Peter needs to come to the conclusion, allowing Miles to call himself Spider-Man has now put himself in such danger that Peter realizes there's just too much attached to that name. If you remember in the 90s series, there was an episode where Flash Thompson dressed up as Spider-Man. Well, Peter told him directly when the bad guy, I think it was the Alistair Smythe was in this episode, and I think it was the Spider Slayer that took Flash Thompson because it thought he was Spider-Man. Peter says something very blunt. He says, now you know how much trouble this costume attracts. That's literally who Peter's character is. In my opinion, the Spider-Man I grew up reading and watching and loving wouldn't allow someone like Miles to call himself Spider-Man. Not because he isn't worthy of the title or anything like that, but it's because Peter is very, very, very set on responsibility. He's dead set on responsibility. And if something bad happens to Miles because he uses a name that Peter has allowed to become associated with such danger, then it's Peter's fault. And I feel that Peter would tell Miles that, or anyone, because he has in the books. there have been moments where Peter's had to learn that lesson, and I think this is where it should be. So what we need to do now, we're introducing Silk, right? So Silk gets her powers, however they end up doing that, and Miles is her mentor, let's say. So we should probably do this in like a Miles Morales sequel or like another spin-off game or something like that, because Marvel Spider-Man 3 has to be about Peter. If it isn't, then, you know, that's going to be upsetting. Peter deserves to have a solid trilogy. And I think Miles does too, but his should be the spin-off games because he's not the mainline Spider-Man, and I don't think he should be in this universe at all. If Peter exists, Peter should always be the main Spider-Man. Because he's the original and he's the favorite, so it just makes no sense otherwise to do anything else. You know, unless you kill him off, which I do not want them to do. They already did that in the Ultimate Universe and it didn't work, so let's not do that. You know, the only time that works was in the Spider-Verse movie when they killed off a Spider-Man we didn't care about. So, what do we do? I think what we should do is Miles and Silk should have some kind of a conversation towards the beginning of the game where he asks Cindy, you know, so what are you going to call yourself or whatever? You know, kind of like how he says it to Harry. Remember, Harry responds in this game when he has the Venom power, so I think I'll just call myself Spider-Man. Because they kind of have this general consensus where if you have spider powers or spider likeness powers or whatever, and you're, you know, fighting crime, you're just Spider-Man. That's the way that they've kind of looked at it. Even Peter called it like the Spider-Man code or whatever, where they almost turn, rather than being a name, they turn it into like a position, like a ranking. Like general or something like that, which I've never liked because Spider-Man is a very personal name for Peter. It's literally the name he used when he decided to change his life. You know, it was a meaningless title that he created in order to hide his identity while being a wrestler and being a stunt double, an actor or whatever, reality TV star. But because that name got his uncle killed, he decided to wear it as a badge or a curse, essentially, to always remind him of his greatest mistake so that he never repeated the mistake. So it's incredibly personal to Peter, and I don't think anyone else should use it. So what I think needs to happen with Miles is he needs to ask Cindy, so what are you going to call yourself? You know, you want to go by like Spider-Woman, or hey, you know, people don't know who you are under the mask, just go by Spider-Man, whatever. And she says, well, no, I want my own identity. And he's going to say, what do you mean? Spider-Man is, you know, that's the greatest thing. And she's like, well, Spider-Man made it the greatest thing because of him, because of his actions. People love Spider-Man because of Peter. So I would like to accomplish that too. I think that I have the ability to accomplish the same thing. I think I can create my own name and with my actions, through my actions, become just as popular, just as loved as the name Spider-Man. But I can be 100% original. So I'm going to call myself Silk. And I think that needs to sit with Miles, you know, because he's very big on identity in this universe. And I think Miles needs to come to the conclusion towards the end, not only because of that conversation, but also because of everything that happens. And Peter essentially tells Miles, look, Miles, I don't want you using the name anymore because of the attraction that it has to danger, you know, with my particular villains. And I think Miles needs to create his own name. I've always been a big advocate for something like Shadow Spider. That's a name that he has in an Elseworld book. They already introduced the suit. I think it's a really cool name. You know, I think one of the biggest issues with Miles having his own name is they've always given him stupid ones like Kid Arachnid or, you know, which I think sounds fine for a sidekick, but Miles isn't really a sidekick in this universe. So let's call him Shadow Spider. Let's make Shadow Spider equally as cool and beloved as the name Spider-Man because Miles does something with it. Miles uses the name Shadow Spider and makes it beloved. Now, this isn't to say that Miles isn't worthy of the Spider-Man name. He obviously has proven himself, but I think that having one's own identity is better. You know, think about it. What's more impressive? Taking over ownership of McDonald's or creating your own fast food chain that you make equally as loved and equally as popular as McDonald's because of your own work. Obviously, it's the last one. That's more impressive. Earning something is great, but creating something is better. So, I think that's where we should go with this. Peter needs to re-establish and re-concrete what it means to be Spider-Man through either the loss of Miles, MJ, or a child. And if Miles doesn't die, it needs to be a situation where Miles creates his own identity. And Peter is Spider-Man, Cindy is Silk, Miles is Shadow Spider, or whatever name they come up with. I personally think Shadow Spider is a cool name. So anyway, that is where I think it should go.